This video is about why intelligent people slowly disappear from others, and why most people don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. You've probably felt it yourself, that quiet distance growing between you and everyone else. Conversations start to feel repetitive, people become predictable, and the more you observe, the less you feel like engaging. At some point, you stop reacting the same way, and people start noticing something has changed. Maybe you've even wondered if something's wrong with you, or why you no longer have the energy to entertain things that once felt normal. But what if this isn't disconnection? What if it's awareness? In this video, you'll understand why intelligent people withdraw what they see that others don't, and how this shift gives them a level of control most people never reach. Stay until the end, because once you see this clearly, you'll start viewing your own distance very differently. You start to notice what most people miss. Beneath every action, there's always something driving it, a desire, a fear, or a need. Compliments, favors, even simple questions, they're rarely as innocent as they look on the surface. You begin to read between the lines, analyzing conversations as they happen, picking up on subtle strategies and hidden intentions. And once you see this clearly, it changes how you engage. It creates a distance, not because you want it, but because you understand too much. That distance, though, becomes a form of power. You begin to predict how people will act, avoid manipulation before it even starts, and protect your energy without effort. Small things stand out now, a hesitation, a shift in tone, a glance that lingers too long. You collect these details without thinking, slowly building a clear picture of what people really want. You start to recognize patterns, the manipulator, the narcissist, the one who hides behind passive behavior. And without realizing it, you become more detached. You're no longer caught inside the interaction, you're observing it, watching, learning, understanding. And once you understand what drives people, you stop falling into the traps they set. Most people think seeing more gives them control, but it quietly starts separating them from everyone else. There's another layer of communication most people overlook, and once you notice it, you can't ignore it anymore. It's in posture, in tone, and in what isn't said at all. You begin to read the pauses, the small shifts in body language, the gap between what someone says and what they actually show. A smile that feels forced, eyes that avoid contact, a jaw that tightens for a second. These moments reveal far more than words ever do. Tone becomes just as important. You start to hear the slight tension, a hint of fear, a trace of resentment or enthusiasm that doesn't feel real. Conversations start to feel different, almost like you're listening to something beneath the surface, picking up on what others miss. And because of that, shallow interactions become harder to sit through. The act feels obvious. The lack of sincerity becomes draining. In solitude, there's nothing to interpret, nothing to question. The silence feels clear, and for the first time it feels honest. And once you start noticing this, you can't unsee it. Over time, the way you see people begins to change. Human behavior starts to feel like a kind of performance, predictable, repetitive, almost scripted. Once you understand what someone fears or what they want, their actions stop feeling random. You can see what's coming before it happens, the conflict, the reaction, even the betrayal. And because of that, the drama starts to lose its effect on you. You're not pulled into it the same way anymore. You just watch with a kind of quiet distance, no longer surprised by what unfolds. It doesn't even create anger or frustration, it creates boredom. You begin to lose interest in the same patterns repeating again and again. What you start looking for instead is something deeper, something real, something that isn't just another version of what you've already seen. So stepping away isn't emotional, it's deliberate. It's a decision not to keep playing a game when you already know how it ends. You're not disappearing, you're just shifting your attention to something else entirely. This is where it changes, and understanding people stops being interesting and starts becoming draining. Heightened awareness isn't something that feels light or easy, it carries weight. When you begin to see the deeper reasons behind people's actions and understand what's really being said beneath the surface, you start to carry a level of awareness most people don't. Every interaction feels layered, every conversation filled with meaning that isn't obvious at first. You're constantly reading between the lines, picking up on things others miss, and over time that becomes exhausting. It creates distance, a quiet separation between you and everyone else, something that feels both powerful and isolating at the same time. The more you see, the less you're drawn to the noise around you. You naturally begin to pull back, not out of weakness, but because silence starts to feel more peaceful than constant decoding. But very few people talk about what this level of awareness actually does to you over time. As your awareness deepens, the things that once felt comforting start to fade. The quiet beliefs people hold on to, like fairness, unconditional loyalty, or a sense of belonging, begin to feel less real. You start to see how much of it is built on perception rather than truth. The world loses a bit of its illusion, and what replaces it is something more raw, more mechanical, more honest. You begin to notice the patterns, the incentives, the hidden structures behind how people behave. And in that clarity, there's a kind of isolation. You can't fully go back to seeing things the way you once did. What once felt natural now feels constructed. So stepping away isn't just about people, it's about stepping away from the illusion itself. You're not retreating out of fear. You're choosing not to live inside something that no longer feels real. And once this shift happens, there's no going back to how you used to see things. The desire for stillness begins when the noise around you becomes too much to ignore. As the illusions fall away, your mind starts to crave something simpler, something quieter. You begin to distance yourself from constant drama, choosing space and reflection over chaos and distraction. In that silence, your focus turns inward. You start to understand yourself more clearly, to think without interruption, to regain control over your own mind. And what you realize is that stillness isn't empty at all. It becomes a foundation, a place where clarity builds, where control strengthens, and where you prepare to engage with the world on your own terms, not everyone else's. At a certain point, you start realizing that not every situation deserves your energy, and not every person deserves a reaction. That's where most people struggle. They understand it intellectually, but still get pulled in emotionally. If you've ever felt that conflict, I put together something called The Art of Strategic Indifference. It breaks down how to stay composed, protect your mental space, and stop giving people the reactions they rely on. If that's something you've been trying to figure out, the link is in the description. Seeing the world clearly comes with a cost that most people don't talk about. It creates a kind of hidden emotional weight. You often become the steady one, the person others lean on, absorbing their stress, managing their emotions, and offering support, even when it isn't returned. Over time, this quiet responsibility starts to drain you. It builds into a deep kind of exhaustion that isn't always obvious on the surface. And eventually, your mind starts to protect itself. You begin to pull back, not because you don't care, but because you need to preserve your energy. The constant effort of engaging with others becomes tiring, and that fatigue pushes you towards something quieter. Disengagement starts to feel less like withdrawal and more like recovery, a necessary step to regain clarity, strength, and control. Moving through a world that feels shallow can become exhausting over time. When your mind naturally looks for depth and meaning, constant small talk and surface-level conversations start to feel empty. You find yourself going through the motions, pretending to be interested, staying present on the outside while feeling distant on the inside. That disconnect builds, and the interactions begin to drain you rather than energize you. You start to feel like there's something missing, something more real that you're not getting from these exchanges. So naturally, you begin to pull away from environments that feel superficial and look for spaces where you can be yourself, where conversations have substance, and where depth isn't rare but expected. After being exposed again and again to manipulation and shallow interactions, your mind starts to crave something simpler. You begin to find comfort in things that are clear and predictable, like the quiet focus of a book, the certainty of solving a problem, or the calm order found in nature. These become a kind of refuge, a space where nothing is hidden and nothing needs to be decoded. You also start to value relationships that are direct and honest, where there's no unnecessary drama or hidden agendas. Over time, your perspective shifts. You realize that real power isn't about engaging in every situation or reacting to everything around you. It's about choosing carefully where your time and energy go, and knowing when something simply isn't worth it. This is the point most people misunderstand. They think it's withdrawal, but it's actually control. What begins as a search for stillness slowly turns into something more deliberate, more strategic. It's no longer just about finding peace. It becomes a form of power. In a world where everyone is constantly present, constantly visible, constantly trying to be seen, there's something different about stepping back. Your absence starts to carry weight. By removing yourself, you create distance, and that distance builds a sense of mystery around you. People notice it, even if they don't fully understand it. What once felt like retreat now becomes intentional. You're not withdrawing, you're choosing when and how you appear. This is where it shifts into something more refined. Disappearance becomes a controlled move, a quiet signal of independence and control. It's not avoidance, it's precision. And in that precision, your presence becomes more powerful precisely because it isn't constant. At this stage, stepping back stops being emotional and becomes strategic. When you step back strategically, you begin to develop something most people never have, an unreadable mind. In a world where everyone shares everything, where thoughts and intentions are constantly exposed, choosing not to reveal yours becomes a powerful advantage. Your next move isn't predictable, and that uncertainty creates leverage. Your mind becomes something others can't easily access or understand, almost like a closed system, a space that belongs entirely to you. And because of that, people start projecting onto you, trying to fill in the gaps themselves. When you respond calmly, without committing too much, You reflect their intentions back at them, giving them room to reveal more than they intended. Over time, this builds a kind of quiet strength. Your thoughts remain protected, your position stays flexible, and your control stays intact. People can't challenge what they can't fully understand, and that makes your silence and restraint one of your strongest advantages. The true purpose of the Machiavellian retreat is the development of real, lasting control. Not the short-term, forceful control of someone trying to dominate everything, but a deeper kind of control built carefully over time. It's about gaining control over yourself, your environment, and ultimately the direction of your life. By stepping away from constant noise, emotional reactions, and social pressure, you create the space needed to build that control properly. The first and most important step is self-mastery. In the quiet you create, you begin to understand and manage your own impulses, emotions, and desires. You're no longer reacting automatically. You start choosing how you respond. That shift is powerful. It becomes the foundation for everything else. Once you have control over yourself, other people lose their ability to influence you emotionally. Their attempts to provoke you with anger, guilt, or even flattery begin to lose their effect because you're no longer responding from impulse, but from control. But the real advantage hasn't fully revealed itself yet. This is just the beginning of control. You start to see these tactics with a kind of distance, like someone carefully studying a mechanism without getting caught in it. You understand how they work, but you don't let them affect you. That emotional stability gives you a clear advantage in any situation. While others react and lose control, you stay composed, think clearly under pressure, and make decisions without being pulled into chaos. Your calmness begins to shape the situation around you. From that position, you become more intentional about your life. You choose who you spend time with, what you focus on, and which situations are worth your energy. You're no longer just going along with expectations, you're deciding your direction. The energy that once went into unnecessary interactions is now used for something more focused and productive. And because you speak and act less often, when you do, it carries more weight. Your presence becomes more effective, not because of volume, but because of precision. Your limited presence starts to carry more weight than someone who is always around. You've learned to make each move intentional, to speak and act with purpose rather than out of habit. This kind of control isn't weakness, it's the opposite. The person who steps back without explanation hasn't given up on the world. They've simply chosen not to follow rules that feel pointless and draining. Instead, they focus on building something stronger, a mind that is disciplined, self-controlled, and strategic. From that position, they engage with the world on their own terms, not someone else's. What looks like disappearance is actually a calculated move. It's trading constant visibility for real control. They haven't vanished. They've stepped back into a position where they can think clearly, act precisely, and direct their life with intention. When you step away from the group, your absence starts to carry its own weight. It's no longer just about not being there. It becomes something people notice. The empty space you leave behind stands out, making others think about your presence, your value, and even their own role in comparison. That absence creates a kind of quiet pressure. People start to fill in the gap with their own thoughts, trying to understand it, trying to interpret it. Without saying anything, you influence how they see you. the space you leave behind begins to shape the situation, subtly guiding attention and perception in your direction. The impact of silence is a quiet kind of power. In a world filled with constant noise, choosing silence stands out more than anything you could say. A simple pause can draw attention without effort. Silence isn't empty, it's a form of presence. And when you do speak, your words carry more weight because they're not given freely. Real authority comes from restraint. What you don't say often leaves a stronger impression than what you do, and that silence lingers even after you're gone. The power of scarcity comes from being rare. When your presence and attention aren't always available, they start to carry more value. You're no longer just another option, you become someone people seek out. The less accessible you are, the more weight your words and time begin to hold. Invitations feel less like expectations and more like requests for your attention. Real authority often belongs to those who don't give themselves away easily, but choose carefully when and where they show up. The movement from noise to silence is now complete. The intelligent person steps away, not as an act of surrender, but as a clear decision to take control. From the outside, it may look like retreat, but internally, it's something very different. It's a rise into a position they've built for themselves. They become harder to read, more composed and steady in their presence. Their strength doesn't need to be shown, it's simply there. This disappearance isn't about escaping the world, it's about mastering it in a different way. Because once you've gained control over yourself, everything else begins to fall into place. If you found this useful, leave a like. It helps more than you think. I'm curious. Do you think distancing yourself gives you more control, or does it isolate you too much? Let me know in the comments. Share this with someone who's been pulling away without explaining why. Subscribe if you want more content like this, and watch the next video to go deeper into understanding power, control, and human behavior.